At 72, I feel a century old. I'm Margaret, and the invisible burdens I've carried throughout my life have aged me far beyond what any facial line could indicate. As I rest on this unyielding, chilly mattress, memories flood back unbidden, rainwater's earthy fragrance, gusts rattling the windows of our childhood home, mother's voice calling my brothers and sisters indoors as dusk approached. Memories don't truly fade, they simply lurk in the soul's shadows, patiently waiting to resurface.
I want to pause for a moment. If you feel the love and are still listening to my story, please subscribe and hit the like button on the Grandparents Memories channel to show your support. Thank you so much.
The 1950s saw my birth in a tiny Texas hamlet. I was child number 3 among 7 siblings. Our residence was cramped, constructed of weathered timber with a perpetually damaged roof. We lacked electricity, relying instead on oil lamps that cast wavering light through frigid winter evenings. Hardship defined our existence, yet I had no concept of comfort to yearn for. Before proceeding further with my tale, I'm curious, where are you listening from? Please share below and I'll respond individually. Don't forget to subscribe and like this video to catch more narratives from elders like myself. Mrs. Antonia, my mother, was a stern woman of minimal conversation and abundant responsibilities. Mr. John, my father, toiled in the fields from dawn until dusk, returning home expecting piping hot meals and complete quiet. There was scant opportunity for tenderness or recreation. Early on, I discovered that in our household, love remained unspoken and undemonstrated. Love meant simply surviving another day without hunger. Unlike today's youth who frolic freely, my childhood looked vastly different. By age 5, I was already assisting mother with laundering my siblings' garments in the river. At 7, I mastered cooking on our wood-burning stove, and by 9, I accompanied father to the fields, clearing weeds with a hoe taller than myself. The harsh sun scorched my delicate skin, while calluses formed on my small palms, yet I remained silent. I swiftly learned that tears invited punishment. Reyeseye school was never a priority. My mother said a woman had to learn to take care of the house, and my father thought studying was for the rich. Even so, I cherished those rare moments when I could escape and sit on the floor of Mrs. Mary's classroom, scribbling in a notebook with a pencil so small it barely fit in my fingers. Mrs. Antonia, Margaret has a knack for learning. You should let the girl study more, the teacher would say. My mother just shook her head, cutting off any hope. And who's going to help me at home? Books don't fill bellies, teacher. And so, my fate was sealed before I even grew up. My brothers didn't have a choice either. The boys went to the fields, the girls to work as maids in other families' homes. By the age of 12, I already knew my life would be an eternal servitude. But inside me, I still harbored a small, fragile, yet persistent dream. I dreamed of having a different family, of marrying a good man who loved me, of having children who would never know hunger or the disdain of a mother, who would never feel the fear of a father. But looking back now, I realize that destiny laughs at our dreams. Life doesn't always give us what we ask for. Sometimes it gives us the exact opposite. My days followed a relentless routine. I woke up before the sun rose, helped my mother prepare breakfast for my siblings, and before I could even take a sip, I was already with my hands plunged into the cold water of the river, scrubbing the clothes of the whole house. Then came the fields, where I spent hours and hours pulling weeds, harvesting whatever the land gave us, sweating under a merciless sun that burned my skin. There was no room for dreaming, but somehow, within me, I still carried the hope of a different future. At 14, my mother announced that I no longer had to worry about the fields. My heart skipped a beat. For a brief moment, I believed that perhaps she had changed her mind and would let me study. But my relief was short-lived. "You're a young lady now, Margaret. I found a good job for you at the Oliveras house. You'll work there as a maid." My breath caught in my throat. The Oliveras family was one of the wealthiest in town, landowners with a big house in the centre. I had heard stories about how they treated their maids. Some girls stayed in their service for years, never returning home. Others left in the middle of the night, crying, never explaining why. I looked at my mother, hoping for a glimmer of compassion, but all I saw was cold determination in her eyes. I don't want any complaints. You're going and you'll be thankful. Some girls don't even get that. And so, with no choice, I was pushed into a new life that wasn't mine, inside a house that would never be mine, serving people who would never see me as an equal. The Oliveira's house was immense, crystal chandeliers, heavy furniture made of noble wood, carpets so soft that my bare feet sank into them. It seemed like another world, but inside, I was nothing more than a shadow. They gave me a poorly lit room in the back, with a thin mattress and a ragged blanket. My days started before the masters and only ended after everyone went to sleep. I washed, cooked, served, and cleaned. The mistress, Mrs. Odette, never looked me in the eyes when she spoke to me. "Margaret, the floor is filthy," she would shout, pointing at a floor already shining from all my scrubbing. The master, Mr. Anselmo, was a quiet, serious man, but those eyes gave me chills. I tried to remain invisible, knowing that if I didn't cause trouble, maybe I could save some money, maybe even build a future for myself. But in houses like that, girls like me had no control over their own destiny. One night in the 1970s, when I was 21, the silence of the house was heavier than usual. The mistress and the children had gone out, leaving only the master. I was about to retire when I heard heavy footsteps behind me. My heart raced. "You're alone, Margaret?" Mr. Anselmo's voice was low and drawn out. I swallowed hard, not turning around. "Yes, sir. I'm going to bed now." I took a step forward, but felt his hand grab my arm. "You're a pretty girl," he murmured, squeezing my wrist with force. Fear surged through my body like a cold wave. I already knew what happened to the other maids when the masters were alone in the house, and I also knew that no one ever believed them afterward. In a burst of impulse, I twisted my arm, broke free, and ran through the dark corridors of the house, stumbling over furniture, holding the scream in my throat. My body trembled, my chest burned. Behind me, I heard only a low laugh. "You're lucky, girl, but your time will come." That night, I didn't close my eyes. I sat on the thin mattress in my little room, hugging my knees, trying to hold back the tears. I couldn't stay there anymore. I knew that if I waited, sooner or later, something worse would happen. The next morning, with the little money I had saved, hidden in the hem of my skirt, I took my things and fled. I ran back home, to my mother, believing I would find protection. But when I arrived, I was met with a furious look. "What are you doing here?" I tried to explain, my voice choked, what had happened. I told her about the master, about the fear I felt, but my mother wasn't moved. "Are you stupid, Margaret? How do you think life works? Men are like that, but it was a good life. Now you've come back here for what? To starve?" I couldn't believe what I was hearing. My own mother, said that as if it meant nothing. "Go back, apologize, do whatever you have to do." A piercing pain shot through my chest. My mother preferred to see me subject to anything rather than back in that house. At that moment, I realized I had no home there. I was just a burden. Without knowing where to go, with no one to help me, I did the only thing left. I took my bundle of clothes and walked away to where I still didn't know. But on that dirt road, under the scorching sun of the countryside, my real life was about to begin. A life of struggle, a life of pain, but perhaps a life that was mine. My feet were covered in red dust when I arrived at the bus station. My hands were sweaty, clutching the bundle of clothes against my chest. I had nowhere to go, not enough money, and knew no one who could help me. But I knew I couldn't stay there, in the house where my own mother turned her back on me, where I was raised just to serve, where there was no room for dreams. My breath was heavy. I looked around, trying to find a familiar face, someone who could tell me what to do. But all I saw was a crowd of strangers, men with straw hats, women carrying baskets, children playing near the road. None of them knew what I was feeling. None of them knew that I was completely alone in the world. I took a deep breath and walked to the ticket counter. "Ma'am, where is the next bus going?" The woman behind the glass looked me up and down with a tired gaze. "It's going to Houston." My mind spun. I had never left my town. Houston seemed like another planet. But maybe that was what I needed. A place where no one knew me, where I could start over, where I could just be Margaret and not the country girl, the maid, the ungrateful daughter who abandoned her home. "How much is the fare?" My voice came out hesitant. She said the amount. I rummaged through the pockets of my skirt, counting the coins, and my stomach churned. I had almost nothing. "Is there a cheaper ticket?" I asked, my voice breaking. The woman rolled her eyes impatiently. "You either pay or you don't go, girl." I swallowed hard. I couldn't give up. I crossed the street where some men were unloading heavy sacks of corn. I walked up to one of them and swallowed my pride. "Sir, do you need help?" The man looked me up and down, surprised. "You, a frail little girl?" "I'm strong," I lied. "I just need a little money to travel." He laughed but handed me a sack of corn. "If you can carry this to the warehouse there, I'll pay you some change." I took the sack, feeling the weight crush my shoulders, but I didn't give up. My legs trembled, my body ached, but I kept going, one step at a time. When I finished, the man patted my shoulder. "All right, girl, here." He handed me some coins. I went back to the ticket counter and with trembling hands, gave her everything I had. "I want the ticket." The woman took the money and, without even looking at me, pushed the ticket through the window opening. It was official. I was leaving. The journey lasted hours. The bus rattled along dirt roads, and with each passing minute, I moved further away from the only life I knew. I arrived in Houston as the sun was setting. The city's smell was different: smoke, grease, trash. The streets were full of cars, honking, and voices. People were walking fast as if they had somewhere to go. I didn't. I hugged my bundle of clothes and started walking, trying to figure out where to go. My stomach growled. I hadn't eaten since morning. I passed by a market and saw a basket of bagels. My heart ached. I could smell the warm bagels, and my mouth filled with saliva, but I had no money. I saw a man in a suit buying a bagel and stuffing the change into his coat pocket. When he walked away, I swallowed my pride and approached him. "Sir, please, could you help me with some change to buy something to eat?" He looked me up and down. "Get lost, girl. Go work." The sound of those words hit me like a slap, but I already knew the world had no mercy for those who had nothing. I kept walking until I saw a poster on a pole. "Kitchen helper needed. Weekly pay." My heart raced. I tore the paper and ran to the address given. I arrived at a small, simple restaurant with the smell of homemade food. A chubby man with an apron stained with flour looked at me suspiciously. "What do you want?" I swallowed hard. "The job. I know how to cook." He raised an eyebrow. "What do you know how to cook?" I thought quickly. "Sandwiches, soups, stews." He laughed. "Oh, really? Then come in. I want to see." I entered. He handed me a knife and pointed to a pile of vegetables. "Cut these for the soup." My hands trembled, but I did as he said. I couldn't lose that chance. He watched me in silence, and after a while he grunted. "All right, start tomorrow." My eyes filled with tears. I had made it. For the first time in my life, I was alone. Without a mother, without a father, without abusive masters. But for the first time, I was starting to build something for myself. And at that moment, I made a promise to myself. I would never let anyone treat me like a disposable object again. If the world wanted to bring me down, I would fight until the end, and that fight was just beginning. That night, after securing my first job in the city, I left the restaurant with a lump in my throat and tears in my eyes. It wasn't sadness, it was relief. I had secured a chance, small, almost insignificant to the world, but to me, it meant everything. But a new problem arose. I had nowhere to sleep. The streets of Houston were alive, full of voices, hurried steps, and lights flashing in the shop signs. I wandered aimlessly with the bundle of clothes pressed against my chest, feeling the cold night wind cut my skin. I passed by a park bench and saw a man lying there, covered by a newspaper, a homeless man. My stomach churned. I wasn't much different from him now. I sat on the bench next to him and closed my eyes. I was so exhausted that my body begged for rest, but the city never sleeps, and so I learned the first great lesson about being alone. The next day, before sunrise, I returned to the restaurant. The smell of strong coffee filled the air, and the boss, Mr. Mario, was already there, cutting meat on an old board. "You're early," he said without looking at me. "I need the job," I replied firmly. He laughed a dry laugh and pointed to the pile of dirty dishes in the sink. "Then start by washing these." And so, my new routine began. The first days were hell. My hands cracked in the cold. My body ached from scrubbing pans. When I wasn't washing dishes, I was peeling onions, cleaning the floor, sweeping the hall. The waiters looked down on me with disdain. I was the new one, the country girl who knew nothing about the city. But I didn't complain. I swallowed every humiliation, every scornful look, every harsh order, because I knew if I failed, I wouldn't have another chance. After a week of work, Mr. Mario called me aside. "Do you need a place to stay?" My eyes widened. "Yes, sir." He rubbed his chin thoughtfully. "There's a little room in the back by the stock. It's not much, but it's better than sleeping on the street." My heart raced. "I can pay, I just need some time to save money." "You don't need to pay anything, girl, but make sure you work right." I almost cried with gratitude, and that's how I got a roof over my head in the big city. The room was small, with a thin mattress on the floor and a tattered blanket, but it was mine. That night, I lay down there, and for the first time since I left my mother's house, I felt safe. But the big city isn't a place for the innocent, and I would learn that the hard way. In that restaurant, I met James. He was one of the waiters, dark-haired, tall, with an easy smile and a charismatic way that made all the girls swoon.
I want to pause for a moment. If you feel the love and are still listening to my story, please subscribe and hit the like button on the Grandparents Memories channel to show your support. Thank you so much.
But he chose to look at me. "You work a lot, don't you, Margaret?" he said one day while I was carrying a stack of plates. I blushed. No one had ever spoken to me like that. "I have no choice," I replied, giving a half smile. From that day on, he started chatting whenever he could, helped me with the plates, gave me food when I couldn't stop for lunch, and little by little, I fell in love. James made me feel special. He said he liked strong women, that I was different from the others. One day, he took me for a walk at the park, bought me ice cream, and made me laugh like I hadn't in years. "You have sad eyes, you know," he said while holding my hand. "Life taught me not to smile so much," I replied, looking away. He squeezed my hand tightly. "I'm going to change that." And foolishly, I believed him. Months passed, and I was living a dream. On my days off, he took me dancing, made me feel beautiful, made me forget that I was just a country girl with no one in the big city. Until one day, he said something that made my heart race. "Let's live together." My chest filled with hope, living with James, having a real home, building a life with someone who loved me. I accepted without thinking twice. That night, I packed my bundle of clothes and left the restaurant to follow the man I believed was my future. He took me to a cramped little room in the city centre. The place smelled musty, the walls were dirty, but I didn't care because, for the first time, I wasn't alone. At least, that's what I thought. The moon was already high when James came home drunk. I tried to help him take off his shoes, but he pushed me away. "Leave me alone, Margaret," he snapped. I was startled. He had never spoken to me like that. The next day, he apologised, said he was tired, that it was nothing. But that was just the first time. Over time, the man who said he loved me turned into another person. He came home late, aggressive, saying things I didn't understand. Until one night, when I asked where he had been, he raised his hand. I froze. He didn't hit me, But in that moment, I knew that if I stayed, sooner or later, he would. That night, I waited for him to fall asleep, gathered my things, and fled. Once again, I was without a home, without anyone. I walked the cold streets, feeling the city crush my chest. But this time I didn't cry. This time I didn't feel sorry for myself. I just felt anger. I had sworn that no one would ever treat me like a disposable object again, and I was going to keep that promise, even if I had to start from scratch again. The night was cold when I left the little room I shared with James. My hands trembled, not just from the icy wind biting my skin, but from the fear of what would come next. Where would I go? What would I do? I no longer had a roof over my head, no longer had a job, and the little I had saved amounted to a few old clothes in a bundle. I walked the empty streets of the city, feeling my eyes burn with exhaustion. My mind tried to understand how everything fell apart so quickly, how after so much struggle, I ended up in the same situation I was in when I arrived. I passed by a bakery that was just opening. The smell of fresh bread hit me hard, and my stomach growled. I need a job. I need a place to stay, I thought. But before finding either of those things, I needed to survive that night. The sky was starting to lighten when I saw an alley behind a closed shop. I leaned against the wall and hugged my knees, trying to fend off the cold. My eyes were heavy, but fear wouldn't let me sleep. I saw other people in the same situation, a man wrapped in a piece of cardboard, a woman sitting in a corner, eyes fixed on the ground. The world treated us as if we were invisible. I was no longer Margaret, the hardworking girl from the restaurant. Now I was just another lost soul in the big city, and this was a reality no one cared to see. The day dawned, and with it came my decision. I wasn't going to give up. I got up, brushed the dust off my skirt, and went back to looking for work. I spent hours knocking on doors, hearing no after no. We already have enough staff. Have you worked in this before? Sorry, we're not hiring. Each negative response was a blow, but I refused to fall. Until, at noon, I walked into a small diner, exhausted and without hope. The owner, a short man with a thick mustache and tired eyes, looked me up and down. "Do you know how to clean floors?" he asked, crossing his arms. "I can do anything," I replied without hesitation. He rubbed his chin and grunted, "All right, you can start now." My chest filled with relief. It was a simple job, the pay was little, but it was a new start. And after everything I had been through, I knew that a new beginning was worth everything. I threw myself wholeheartedly into the work. I arrived early at the diner, before the customers, swept the hall. My arms ached, my feet burned from walking from one place to another, but I didn't care. Gradually, I earned the owner's trust. "You work well, girl. You don't complain. You're not late. If you keep it up, I might pay you a bit more next month." I barely held back my smile. I needed that money. But even with the job, I still didn't have a place to stay. I slept in the diner's storage room, hidden, afraid they would find out and kick me out. But I refused to give up. I had already lost everything once. I wouldn't lose it again. At that time, I learned that life in the big city is made of small victories and great defeats. It was in one of those defeats that I discovered how cruel the world can be. One night, the diner was full. The strong smell of cigarette smoke and bourbon mixed in the air. The men spoke loudly, their laughter exaggerated. I was behind the counter, cleaning glasses, when I heard my name. "Hey, Margaret, serve us another round here." I looked at the table and saw a group of drunk men. My instincts alerted me. I grabbed the bottle and brought it to them, trying to be quick. But when I reached out to hand over the glass, I felt one of them grab my wrist. "What a delicate hand," he murmured with a crooked smile. I tried to pull away, but he tightened his grip. "Let her go, man," someone said in the background. "Ah, I'm just kidding," he laughed, but kept his grip firm. "A pretty girl like this should be serving something else, not drinks." My stomach churned. I pulled my arm with force, and this time he let go. "Respect the girl, you idiot," another voice rose. I looked to the side and saw James, one of the cooks from the diner, red with rage. "If you touch her again, I'll break your face." The man laughed but didn't insist. My chest rose and fell rapidly. James pulled me by the arm and took me to the back of the diner. "Are you okay?" I nodded, trying to hide the trembling in my hands. "Be careful with those guys," he continued. "This isn't a safe place for a woman alone." I knew he was right, but I had no choice. James started protecting me whenever he saw something wrong, stepping in, and little by little a feeling began to grow. He was different from James. He was quiet, hardworking, never looked at me with malice. One day, when the diner was about to close, he sat next to me at the counter. "Do you have somewhere to go?" I sighed. "Not yet." He stayed silent for a while, then said, "I have a spare room at the boarding house where I live. If you want, you can stay there until you get back on your feet." I looked into his eyes, trying to see if there was any hidden intention, but all I saw was sincerity. And for the first time in a long time, I felt that maybe, just maybe, fate was giving me a new chance. That night, I packed my things and followed James to the boarding house. The room was simple, small, but clean. "You can stay here as long as you need," he said before leaving. I stared at the door for a while, trying to decide if I should trust him. But deep down, I felt that James was different. Little did I know that years later, he would become the most important person in my life. When James closed the door to the room and left me alone, I sat on the bed and let out the breath I had been holding. For the first time in months, I had a roof over my head. The mattress was thin, the sheets smelled of cheap soap, but it was a space of my own, a small room inside a modest boarding house in the city centre. No luxury, no comfort, but I needed nothing more than a bit of peace. My hands glided over the worn bedspread as I absorbed that moment. After everything I had been through, sleeping on the street, being humiliated, suffering violence in the hidden corners of life, finally someone extended a hand to me without asking for anything in return. James. It was still hard to believe there were good people in the world, but there he was. And although my heart still bore scars, I felt I could trust him. The next morning, I woke up early and went straight to the diner. Even exhausted, I worked harder than ever because now I had a reason to fight. And James was always nearby, discreet but attentive. "How's the room?" he asked one night while cleaning the tables. "It's fine, thank you, really." He gave a half smile, rubbed his neck as if he didn't know how to handle gratitude. "You've been through a lot, haven't you?" I just nodded. There was no need to say more. Months passed, and the hard work began to pay off. The diner owner noticed my effort and one day called me aside. "Margaret, can you cook?" My heart leapt. "Yes, I can cook, sir." "Then come to the kitchen tomorrow. I want to see if you really can." I could hardly believe it. After so long washing dishes and cleaning tables, I finally had the chance to show I was more than just a helper. The next morning, I woke up before the sun rose, determined to be impeccable. I tied up my hair, washed my hands thoroughly, and entered the kitchen with my head held high. And there was James, smiling at me from across the counter. "Good luck, Margaret." My heart warmed. I started by helping prepare the dishes, chopping vegetables, seasoning meats, stirring pots. The first days were tough, the cooks were demanding, and any mistake was met with harsh looks and complaints. But I didn't give up, and then one day, the head cook needed to leave early. The owner looked at me and said, "Margaret, make the sandwiches. I want to see if they're as good as you say." My stomach twisted. If I messed up, I would lose everything, but I couldn't mess up. My fingers trembled slightly as I gathered the ingredients. I did what I had learned from my mother back on the farm. The smell of cooking sandwiches, bacon frying, the aroma of fresh bread took me back in time. When I finished, I plated everything and handed it to the owner. He took a bite, tasted it, and was silent for a moment. Time froze, and then he looked at me and said, "From today on, you're the cook." My eyes filled with tears. I had made it. The next day, James appeared in the kitchen with a plate in hand. "I want to try the famous Margaret sandwiches." I laughed, handing him a fork. He tasted it and closed his eyes in enjoyment. My God, marry me. I blushed instantly. James laughed, and so did I. But little did we know that moment would be the beginning of something much bigger between us. Time passed, and little by little, my life began to settle. Now I earned a bit more and managed to buy some things for my room at the boarding house. One day, after work, James walked me home. So, have you managed to save some money? Little by little, I replied. He rubbed his neck, looking nervous. Have you thought about leaving this boarding house and living with me? My heart raced. James, He took my hand, serious. I like you, Margaret. You're strong, hardworking, you have a good heart. I know you've suffered a lot, but I want to give you a real home. Tears burned my eyes. For so long I had been rejected, humiliated, discarded, and now someone was looking at me with sincere love. That night I lay on the bed, staring at the ceiling, afraid of giving in and being hurt again. But for the first time, my heart wanted to believe that perhaps fate was giving me a new beginning. And so, without realizing it, I began to fall in love. But life, as always, still had many trials in store for me. Life seemed to have finally settled for me. James and I started sharing a small, simple but cozy room. He continued working at the diner, and I, now a cook, felt immense pride every time someone praised my food. For the first time in a long time, I began to believe that maybe I could have a happy future. But life, that cursed thing, doesn't like people like me dreaming too high. And so, without realizing it, I was drawn into a new nightmare. In the first few months, James was everything I had ever wanted. He treated me with affection, helped me as much as he could, held my hand as we walked through the city centre on Sundays. You're my woman, Margaret, he would say. We'll build a life together. I believed every word because I wanted to believe, needed to believe. But then, small things started to change. James began coming home late from work, and when I asked where he had been, he would only say, with friends. At first, I didn't suspect anything, but over time, the tardiness became constant, and with it came the flimsy excuses. James, why are you home so late? Oh, Margaret, you're getting annoying now. Can't I go out without having to explain myself? It's not that. I just wanted to know where you were. I was where I wanted to be, all right? That answer hurt, but as always, I swallowed my pride and stayed quiet. Maybe it was just in my head. Maybe I was overreacting. Until one night, he didn't come home at all. I sat on the bed until sunrise with a heart that had never done that before. When he finally showed up, with red eyes and the strong smell of alcohol clinging to his clothes, my patience wore thin. Where were you? I asked firmly. He snorted, throwing his keys on the floor. I slept at a friend's house. What friend? He looked at me with impatience. Margaret, stop it. Do you think I'm your prisoner? No, James, but I'm your woman. I have the right to know where you slept. He looked at me in a way he had never done before, a way that chilled me to the bone. If you're not happy, the door's open. My heart broke at that moment. That man, the same one who promised to take care of me, who gave me a home when I had nothing, now spoke to me as if I were nothing. But I still didn't want to see the truth, still thought he could go back to being the James who made me smile. And that was my biggest illusion. The blow came a few months later. I already felt in my heart that something was wrong, but I closed my eyes so as not to see. Until one day, one of the waitresses at the diner, a girl named Sarah, called me aside. Margaret, I need to tell you something.
I want to pause for a moment. If you feel the love and are still listening to my story, please subscribe and hit the like button on the Grandparents Memories channel to show your support. Thank you so much.
My stomach churned. What is it? She hesitated for a moment, but then said it plainly. James has another woman. I felt as if the ground had disappeared beneath my feet. What? He's seeing a woman from the Merchants District. I've seen them together several times. My mind spun, my body went cold. I wanted to scream, cry, pull my hair out, but I did nothing, just stood there, feeling my heart shatter. That night, when James came home, I was already waiting. He entered without looking at me, took off his shoes, and went straight to bed. "James," I called. He didn't respond. "I know," he frowned. "Know what?" I swallowed my tears. "I know you have another woman." Silence. Silence so heavy it seemed to swallow the air in the room. Then he sighed and said the worst thing I could hear. "So what?" My chest burned. "So what? I'm your woman, James. You promised me." "I promised what, Margaret? That I'd support you for the rest of your life? That I'd be the perfect man? Wake up." "I gave up everything for you." He laughed, a bitter, cruel laugh. "Gave up what? You never had anything." Those words destroyed me. I had never had anything, not when I was a child, not when I worked as a maid, not when I was abandoned in the world without a penny, and now, even after so much struggle, I still had nothing. That night, I made the decision I should have made long ago. I packed my clothes, shoved them into a bundle, and stood by the door. James lay on the bed, indifferent. But before leaving, I looked at him one last time. You may think I'm weak now. You may laugh at me. You may say I've never had anything. I took a deep breath. But one day, I'll be more than all this. He didn't respond, and for the second time in my life, I left without looking back. The night air was cold, but this time I didn't feel lost. I had been through this before, and this time I knew exactly what to do. I was going to start over again, but this time no one would destroy me. No one. The door to the little room slammed shut behind me, and for the second time in my life, I left home without looking back. The cold night air kissed my skin, but I felt no shiver. This time the pain didn't crush me. This time there was no despair, no tears streaming down my face. There was only one certainty: I would never again be dependent on any man. I walked the empty streets, feeling the weight of my bundle of clothes on my shoulder. My heart beat firmly, as if each step I took was a blow against the fate that had tried to crush me since I was born. I had nowhere to go, but for the first time, that didn't scare me, because now I was capable of rebuilding myself as many times as necessary. When day broke, I went straight to work. The diner owner looked at me strangely when he saw me arriving before everyone else. "What are you doing here so early?" "I need work," I replied. He raised an eyebrow. "You already work here." I took a deep breath. "I want more. I need to save money. Anything." He stared at me for a few seconds, then grunted. "You want more work? Then clean the stockroom. There are mouldy crates of drinks back there. If you can handle it, I'll pay you some extra at the end of the month." I didn't hesitate, tied my apron, pinned my hair up, and headed to the back. I spent the entire day cleaning the stockroom, lifting heavy crates, sweeping the dust, scrubbing every corner until my hands went numb. And when I finished, I felt a pride I had never felt before, because at that moment, I realized that no one could take anything from me anymore. I didn't depend on James anymore. I didn't depend on a roof that wasn't mine. And from that day on, everything I had would be built with my own hands. In the following months, I worked tirelessly. If someone needed help, I volunteered. If there were more dishes to wash, more floors to scrub, I did it without complaining. The big city had taught me that the world has no mercy for the weak, and I refused to be weak. Over time, customers started noticing me. Some praised my food, others asked me to prepare special dishes. The owner noticed and called me into the office. "You have talent. The customers like your seasoning." My heart raced. "Thank you, sir." He sighed, as if considering something important. "Have you ever thought about opening your own business?" My breath caught in my throat. Me, having my own business? The idea seemed so impossible that I almost laughed, but he wasn't joking. "You already have a loyal clientele. If you save money, you could open a small restaurant." I was speechless. That was the first time someone believed I could be more than just a maid. That night, I lay on my bed at the boarding house, staring at the ceiling. I remembered everything I had lived through, remembered the day my mother abandoned me to work as a maid, remembered the day I ran away from the master's house to avoid harm, remembered the day I arrived in the city with nothing, not a single cent, remembered the day I fell in love with James, believing in his lies, remembered the day he betrayed me and told me I would never have anything. And now, I was determined to prove to myself that I could build a life on my own terms. I started saving every penny. I ate less, saved every last bit. It took 2 years of saving money, and when I finally had enough, I rented a small space in the city centre. It was a modest place, a little doorway with a counter, but it was mine. My mother used to say that a woman didn't need to study, that a woman was born to serve. James used to say I'd never have anything, that I'd always depend on a man. But when I opened my small restaurant, I proved to myself that no one would ever again decide my destiny for me. On the first day of operation, I put on my apron and stood behind the stove. The smell of cooking sandwiches filled the air, and gradually customers began to arrive. The first meal I sold was to an elderly man in a worn suit. He took the plate, took a bite, and then smiled. "Ma'am, this is the best sandwich I've ever eaten in my life." My eyes stung with emotion. Right then, I knew my life would never be the same. I was no longer a discarded, humiliated, forgotten woman. I was Margaret, the owner of my own destiny, and that was just the beginning of my true story. The restaurant had been running for over a year. I still remembered the first day, the fear of not succeeding, the nervousness of serving the first customers. Little by little, I started gaining a reputation, and the sandwiches I prepared became known. I managed to buy new utensils and even a nice sign at the entrance, "Margaret's Home Cooking." Every time I looked at it, an immense pride filled my chest. For the first time, I had something that was truly mine. But life never lets us rest for too long. It was a hot afternoon when a figure from the past walked through the restaurant door. At first, I didn't recognize her, but then she took off her sunglasses and looked me in the eyes. It was Emily, my daughter. My heart froze. Time had passed for both of us. It had been over 10 years since the day I was abandoned at the nursing home, as if I were nothing. 10 years without a call, without a letter, without a single "How are you, Mum?" And now, there she was, standing in front of me. I swallowed hard, feeling a wave of emotions crush me. Anger, resentment, sadness, and deep down, a pain that had never disappeared. Emily pulled out a chair and sat down without being invited. We sat in silence for long seconds, and then she spoke. "I heard you opened a restaurant." My voice came out hard. "How did you hear?" She hesitated. "A friend told me." I crossed my arms. "And what do you want here, Emily?" She lowered her eyes, fiddling with the ring on her finger. "Mom, Don't call me Mom." The phrase got stuck in my throat, but I didn't say it because despite everything, she was still my daughter, and I wanted to hear what she had to say. "I was wrong," she continued, her voice shaky. "I know I treated you badly. I know I was ungrateful." My eyes stung. "You weren't just ungrateful, Emily. You abandoned me, left me at that nursing home like I was a burden." She lowered her head. "I know." "You know?" My voice came out louder than I intended. "And what have you done with that? You spent 10 years without looking back, 10 years without caring if I was alive or dead." She took a deep breath, closed her eyes for a moment, and then whispered, "I regret it." I laughed without humor. "Regret it now, after 10 years?" "I thought you'd never forgive me," she said, looking at me, her chest burning. "And why do you think I will now?" She remained silent and then said the truth. "Because I'm alone." My heart stopped for a second. She continued, "My husband left me, took everything. I'm without a home, without money, with nothing." Her words echoed in my chest. It was that. She hadn't come because she missed me. She came because now she had no one, and she hoped I'd take her in, the same mother she had abandoned. I blinked a few times, feeling a mix of anger and sadness. I could have sent her away, made her feel what I felt. I could have turned my back and let her suffer as she did with me. But then a voice inside me whispered, "You are not like them." My mother discarded me when I was young. James humiliated me when I needed him most. Emily abandoned me when I was no longer useful. And I had survived, I had triumphed. And it was precisely because of that that I didn't need to return the same hatred to the world. I took a deep breath, looked at her and said, "Do you want to work?" She looked at me confused. "What?" "If you want to start over, I'll give you an opportunity, but don't expect it to be easy. Here, no one gets anything for free." Her eyes filled with tears. You forgive me?" I lowered my eyes. "Forgiveness is something that needs to be earned, Emily." She nodded, understanding. And there, at that moment, fate gave us one last chance, a chance to rebuild not the past, but a new future together. The days that followed were strange, seeing Emily in my restaurant, wearing an apron like mine, serving tables and washing dishes. It was something I never imagined would happen. She, who once felt ashamed of me, who turned her back on me, was now there, trying to prove she deserved a second chance. But could I forgive her? In the beginning, everything was difficult. Customers looked at her with curiosity, and some who already knew my story asked in hushed voices, "Is she your daughter?" I would just nod, and the questions continued. "How can you let her be here after what she did?" I never knew what to answer because, deep down, I still wasn't sure what I felt. Emily also seemed lost. She didn't know how to talk to me. I saw her effort in every little gesture. She stayed late to clean the restaurant, brought me coffee before I asked, tried to make small talk about simple things like the weather or the customers. But between us, there was a visible wall, a wall she herself built when she abandoned me at the nursing home, and now she was trying to tear it down, brick by brick. Until one day, her patience ran out. The restaurant had already closed, and I was cleaning the counter when she threw a rag on the table and said, with a trembling voice, "How long are you going to punish me, Mum?" I stopped what I was doing and looked at her. "What do you mean?" "I know you still hate me. I know you only let me stay here because you have a kind heart, but how long will you keep treating me like a stranger?" I crossed my arms. "You want me to forget everything overnight?" "I just want a chance." She took a deep breath and ran her hands over her face, frustrated. "I've already understood that I was a horrible daughter. I've already realized that I hurt you in a way I might never be able to fix. But I'm trying, Mum. I'm trying." My throat tightened. Emily had never said that, never admitted her guilt so directly. And there, seeing her in front of me, vulnerable, tired, repentant, something inside me finally broke. I approached slowly and looked her in the eyes. "Do you really want to change, Emily?" She nodded, tears in her eyes. "I do." "Then prove it." She blinked, surprised. "How?" I held her hands and spoke firmly. "It's not just by working here that you'll fix what you did. You need to be a different woman." "How do I do that?" she asked, her eyes moist. "Never abandon those who love you. Never turn your back on those who extend a hand to you. Never treat anyone like you treated me." She sobbed, nodding in agreement. And then, after years, after so much resentment and accumulated pain, I hugged her. She broke down in tears in my arms, and I felt a huge weight dissolve inside me. I wasn't just forgiving Emily, I was freeing myself. And finally, I could move forward. Today, as I sit on the doorstep of my restaurant, modest and welcoming, it reflects my entire journey. I feel that finally, every penny, every drop of sweat, every cry of revolt brought me here. My name is Margaret, and this is the story of how I fought against destiny, reclaimed my dignity, and transformed pain into strength to build a legacy. When I look back, I see a road full of shadows and faint lights. I remember the days when the world seemed to have abandoned me, the cold nights when I slept on the streets without shelter or hope, the moments when disdain and betrayal seemed to have sealed my fate. But with each challenge, I learned that true strength doesn't reside in never falling, but in getting up, even when body and soul call for surrender. After that painful encounter with Emily, my daughter, who once rejected me and now seeks redemption, I decided that true change began within me. I knew that forgiveness wasn't forgetting, but freeing the heart from an unbearable burden. And so I began to tread a new path, the path of overcoming. The days following our reunion were filled with long, silent conversations, shared tears, and challenges that only time and love can heal. Each morning, as I opened my restaurant doors, I saw not only customers hungry for a meal, but people who, like me, were seeking refuge, proof that life could be restarted. During this period, I realized that the strength of my story lay not only in me, but in every person who identified with the daily struggle for dignity. The sandwiches I prepared with so much care became a symbol, a dish that said, I fought, I suffered, but today I have a home.
I want to pause for a moment. If you feel the love and are still listening to my story, please subscribe and hit the like button on the Grandparents Memories channel to show your support. Thank you so much.
Customers came from afar, not just to eat, but to feel the energy of someone who hadn't let adversity win. Meanwhile, Emily sought ways to redeem herself. She worked by my side, initially timidly, then with more confidence, understanding that to rebuild her own life, she first needed to repair the mistakes of the past. I learned not to be severe, but to set limits. I taught her that forgiveness is a two-way street. If you expect to be forgiven, you must also forgive. And little by little, we rebuilt our relationship, brick by brick, with a lot of effort, and above all, with love. The difficulties didn't disappear overnight. There were nights when memories of the old times came knocking at the door, threatening to drag me back to the abyss. I remember a dawn when, after a heated argument with Emily about the future, I felt the weight of all my failures. I sat alone in the hall, feeling the walls closing in around me as if they wanted to trap me in that moment of despair. But at that exact moment, I remembered every battle I had already won, remembered how far I had come, from the humble girl who dreamed of a safe home to the woman who refused to be defined by abandonment and betrayal. Gradually, I began to write. I wrote about the pain, the loneliness, the rebellion that drove me to fight. I wrote about the hope that ignited amid the darkness. Each word, each page was both a vent and a reaffirmation that I was stronger than any setback. I discovered that writing became a therapy, a way to turn pain into art, sadness into inspiration. I organised small gatherings at the restaurant where customers and friends could share their own stories of struggle and overcoming. We created an environment where pain wasn't a source of shame, but a springboard for transformation. People who had been through difficult times found there a place to heal and rebuild. Today, looking back, I see that every scar on my body tells a story of victory, the marks from years of hard work, the traces of tears, and the cuts from the difficult life I led have turned into invisible medals of courage. I refuse to let the past define me. The restaurant I built isn't just a business, it's a sanctuary. It's a place where people like me find comfort, where the simple act of eating becomes a celebration of life. Every dish I serve carries a piece of my story, the story of a woman who, even in the face of adversity, decided her destiny wouldn't be dictated by abandonment or pain. And I learnt that to truly overcome, we need to look within and find that spark that reminds us of who we really are. No matter how many times the world tries to knock us down, the soul that fights will always find the strength to start over. Today, I say to all women who have been despised, who have been abandoned, who have felt alone and worthless, you are capable of transforming your pain into power, converting tears into smiles, making your suffering the foundation for a new life. My legacy, what I built with so much sweat, isn't just Margaret's home cooking. It's the message I leave for future generations. Don't let anyone define your worth. Fight, even when everything seems lost. Believe that after every storm, the sun can shine brighter. And if you ever feel alone, look within yourself and remember that every challenge is an opportunity to rise again. Remember that every scar is a living proof that you have won. Looking back on my journey today, I see how every decision, every moment of perseverance when surrender seemed the only option, has sculpted the woman I've become. My experiences stand as testament to the transformative power of self-compassion and unwavering resolve. I, Margaret, embody the truth that triumph isn't a fixed destination, but rather a continuous expedition. Along this path, each footstep counts, each failure offers wisdom, and even the smallest victories deserve recognition. When I hand a freshly prepared sandwich to a customer with a warm smile, or when Emily's infectious chuckle fills our space, I understand that every hardship held purpose. Ultimately, existence distills to these precious instances of profound thankfulness and the knowledge that we possess greater strength than our challenges. My message to you all is this: refuse to let past wounds dictate your identity. Construct, with patience and persistence, the life you merit. One abundant with affection, dignity, accomplishments, and most essentially, optimism. As I conclude another workday, while darkness gently blankets the urban landscape, I recognize that my path, though marked with wounds, also brims with brightness. This illumination now emanates not solely from within me, but from everyone who discovered their authentic selves, stood tall, and evolved. This constitutes my enduring contribution. This represents my authentic self. And should doubt ever surface, remember this: I endured and I prevailed. You too can triumph.
Hello, dear audience. I'm Margaret, and I would like to sincerely thank all of you for taking the time to listen to my story today. At 72, looking back on my journey, I realized that every wound and every challenge has become an inseparable part of who I am today. My life, from a poor little girl in rural Texas to a woman cast aside by society, and finally, the proud owner of a small eatery, is a testament to the power of faith and perseverance. To anyone going through hardships, I want to say, never let circumstances define your fate. Believe in yourself, rise after every fall, and build the life you truly deserve. I am deeply grateful to the Grandparents Memories channel and its founder for inviting me here and giving me the opportunity to share my story. Platforms like this are invaluable, allowing our generation's experiences to inspire and teach the generations to come. If my story has touched your heart, please consider subscribing to Grandparents Memories and giving this video a like. Your support will help bring more meaningful stories to a wider audience. Once again, thank you all for listening to my story. I look forward to sharing more with you on Grandparents Memories. Wishing you all a day filled with happiness and peace.